Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Oddities news video. Well, this is a follow-up with regards to my last video where I highlighted all the newest information on the Legends of the Lost show with Megan Fox. In this case, I promised I was going to do a review once I finally saw the very first episode and then give my thoughts and opinions, overall review when it comes to that brand new series. So it took a little bit longer than usual, but I finally saw the episode and I have some time off today to do this review. So here goes. This is essentially the very first episode review, and I'll see if I can do some more with some of the other episodes as well, because there's at least four that are scheduled to be presented soon. The second one just debuted as well, so I'll see if I can do that, or probably just group them all under one later on. So, but here goes. Here's my review of my official review in this case of the new show. So, Legends of the Lost with Megan Fox. First, let me talk about the pros, and then I'll talk about the cons, and then I'll overall give my number of stars for this new series. But yes, I went into this with a little bit of info, not too much. Obviously, I knew some of it because I was reporting on this for a little while, for about almost 6 months or so when it was announced, and so I was gathering info here and there, but still, I didn't have enough to give me a true opinion, like a true preset opinion before the show came on. But sure enough, when I checked my Spectrum app, I have it there on demand, and so I let it play. And here's all the pros that came with the show. First off, the biggest one is this: it has a great budget, which is really, really good. That's what I was scared of. This is a show that's on the Travel Channel, a brand new show as well. It doesn't have, in other words, a couple of series already backed up in it. The only thing going for it, of course, is a megastar, in this case involving Megan Fox. So I thought to myself, there's a chance it'll either have a really good budget or it'll have a lousy budget, and you can really tell when certain shows have pretty bad budgets. But no, it looked like it was an expensive, good spent show, because right off the bat, it started with a nice little intro, and then it started showcasing all these actors, in other words, reenacting some of the Vikings that were being talked about throughout the show. And then also they had all this budget to fly Megan, and then not only that, but her crew and all the crew of the TV to all these different locations. I was surprised at the number of locations that this show jumped to back and forth. They were actually there. In other words, it would have been so easy for this TV show to instead talk about a location, maybe show pictures of it, but not have the actual crew there for it. But no, in this case, they actually went to those places. By the time I was like seeing the fourth or fifth location, along with multiple segments again of all those reenactments, that was really, really neat. I loved seeing that there was a great budget for this show, because it shows that they went all out on their research, no expenses spared. In other words, when it came to this stuff, a great example that comes to mind is of how things change whenever budgets change. Ghost Adventures started off with a really small budget, obviously, like when they first began. I was there from the beginning with them. And then somewhere throughout the seasons, they got much larger budgets, and they began traveling to a lot of international locations. And I think by the second or third season, they were going through many off country locations outside the US. But somewhere along the way, the budget started decreasing. Maybe things were getting tight at the series, whatever's the case. But now a lot of the locations are back here in the US, and they have to do with places that now it seems to be more of hotels or stuff involving residences. So it goes to show the examples whenever you have big budget compared to smaller budget. But in this case, it looks like things are going good with Megan's show. Another pro is right off the bat, by about the second or third segment, I could tell that she's really passionate about what she's talking about. Absolutely. I mean, this is something where she was stating earlier her vision, her ensemble, like why she was doing this show. She even mentioned it like in the intro as well. There's that, and then there's actually seeing it and knowing that someone can't really fake that enthusiasm. Absolutely, she is passionate about it. I mean, she was there at those locations, and you could just tell that she was so giddy to be there interviewing all these people, finding all these facts, finding all these secrets, everything as far as every new segment. You could absolutely tell that this was her passion. So I also like the fact that she was constantly naming off things as well, along with the people that she was interviewing. So she goes through the research, and then also she was tying him in to some of the popular sci-fi stuff. Like every now and then she would throw things how they were tied to Harry Potter world, or others to the Game of Thrones. So it goes to show again that she is a true history buff, and then also a true sci-fi buff as well, as she's mentioned in the past. The other thing I liked about the show too, a good pro, is it's copying a popular strategy from another show, in that case Ancient Aliens. It ties into what I was just mentioning about her being passionate about that stuff, because that is her favorite show that she mentioned one time in an interview. So in this case, tying it into that strategy makes sense, because if it works at another place, why not keep it here as well? And it has to do with following a theory, an unconventional theory, and then going through segments backing up that theory, either through interviews, finding artifacts, going to those aforementioned locations I just mentioned, and then also making sure that eventually everything ties up to this is why it's true, or in some cases why it's false when it comes to that theory that was proposed at the beginning of these episodes. So in this case, with the first premiere episodes having to do with women Viking warriors, it basically followed that same motion throughout the entire set of segments. So I have a theory that it's going to continue that way throughout the next 3 episodes, and if it gets renewed, which I hope it does, then it'll continue that way as well. So another pro associated with it. And then lastly, another good pro is overall the segments were interesting. Some of them were long and slow, and I'll mention that more in the cons here in a minute. But some of the segments did truly stand out. Those are the stuff that I want to see more of. There's one that absolutely just immediately stood out, and that was when Megan went out there in the forest when she was talking to someone who was describing how back then there was these almost like witches that would help create magic when it came to the Viking women warriors and the success associated with them. So she was out there in a solo outing in the middle of the woods by herself, spending the night, just like the people back then did, in a way that she was trying to mimic them throughout this segment. That immediately was, to me, the highlight of the episode. I want to see something more along those lines, where it's really stuff that is original, that's out there, that stuff that would be riveting, instead of, let's say, just doing just plain pure interviews throughout the entire segments. But still, a good bit of interesting segments, especially when they went up and she would bring up all these places that have been around for thousands of years, and then she was there visiting them, and then also places that have really not holy but very sacred stuff that she would bring out. Those are the segments that also stood out for me too, because you got to see the real deal rather than again just seeing pictures of them. Now, as far as the cons, yes, there were some cons associated with the episode. After everything finished, the big first con that came to mind was this is too long. This is an hour-long episode. It's way too long. I think, in my opinion, it should be at least 30 minutes, cut in half, basically. Or, if it's going to stick with an hour, focus on maybe 2 topics instead of 1. And that's because, at the end of the day, I tested against my own theory. I watch these things. I watch episodes. I watch TV. I watch movies on my phone. Basically, the only time I do all this is when I'm exercising. And so my theory is, if it holds my attention when I'm exercising, then it's good. If it doesn't, and I'm having to switch back and forth to something else, then it needs to be worked on. And almost it was the case here, because at being almost like 45, 50 minutes of one single topic, it kind of got a little boring afterwards. So that was a con, in my opinion, associated with the episode. That leads to the next con. Having it be an hour long, it has to fill with too much of the same stuff, and that led to a lot of things just basically repeating themselves over and over. I think like every other segment, it was, or every other moment within each segment, it was her going over again about how women Viking warriors, the idea, the notion of them was something that was almost suppressed or being repressed within society, or this could change everything that we knew about Vikings. It kind of like kept going to that same thing over and over throughout multiple segments. And then the interviews, after a little while, just started to get more ad nauseum. So again, it ties into my first con. If you're spending the topic for an entire hour, you have to make it interesting, or you have to switch things up. Otherwise, you can't focus on it. I suggest maybe they try to follow like what Ghost Adventures did, which they too focus on just one thing throughout the entire episode, but they do it through multiple segments, through multiple changes. Like there's the first segment when they basically fly out and meet the people. Then the second segment they do history about the place. Then the third segment it's almost like the setup for the investigation, then the actual investigation, and then finally the last segment is the results, or a follow-up, if you will. So if they do something like that, that could work with this season of episodes. But yes, another big con was at certain points it was just plain boring. I was debating about changing and coming back to it, but I told myself, no, I have to see everything here first, finish it up, and then give my opinion on there. Lastly, another con I thought on here was there's always supposed to be a strong episode whenever a new series comes about. Anytime a new show comes forward, it basically has one chance to keep people hooked. And that's it, because if people don't find that particular topic to have that kind of hook, then they don't come back afterwards. So I thought it was a kind of unusual choice in the first episode for it to be, in this case, the women Viking warriors, and the idea that they were that there's there's more stories out there, but maybe the stuff is being suppressed, or maybe the information is just not being presented correctly. Either way, though, when comparing it to some of the other episodes that'll come about, like involving Stonehenge or the Trojan War, I thought to myself, those seem more like first episode type shows, the kind of stuff that'll really keep people riveted and then keep them coming back for other episodes. A great example is I love that show Kitchen Nightmares there that used to air on Fox. I remember the very first episode, Peters, to this very day. It has to do with a guy who was running the place, the restaurant, almost like a mafioso type guy, and they were constantly getting into fights. There was yellings. There was people that were confronting each other. All that stuff happened throughout the entire episode. That was a hook episode, absolutely. Like that brought me back and kept me coming back to Kitchen Nightmares afterwards. In this case, a story about women Viking warriors is fine, but I thought it should have been more along the lines of the mysteries of Stonehenge, or again something involving the Trojan War. I thought that might have hurt the show more than having people not come back afterward. It might have hurt things, but who knows? I'm waiting to see what the results are on the ratings. I don't know if the Travel Channel will release that stuff, or if the show itself will release it as well. But it'll be interesting to see if things go up or if they go down by the second episode. Traditionally, most season premiere episodes have the big, strong opening, and then they start to whittle away. It won't surprise me too much if this stuff goes down. But still, I thought they should have gone with a much more well-known topic like Stonehenge. Everyone knows Stonehenge, or everyone wants to know more about Stonehenge, and so I thought that might have helped it more. But yes, that's my overall review for Legend of the Lost with Megan Fox. Overall, I'll give it 3 out of 5 stars. It did have some good things associated with it, the budget, Megan being passionate about it, good, interesting segments, but there are still some cons as well. It needs to be more spiced, like it needs to have more more immaterial that'll keep you focused on it, as was what I think, or cut it down in half so that way it doesn't have to have too much filler material. But still, I see potential for this show, and I'm going to try to see the other episodes as they premiere, and then also do probably one last follow-up review afterward. And hopefully, fingers crossed, they'll have this series renewed for a second season sometime soon. But what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on this show as well? Is this something that you saw? Did you like it? Did you hate it? What were your thoughts? What were your opinions? I would love to hear with that and share it with everyone else here too. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.